Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Luttrell from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see everybody again, Colonel and Sheriff Coe. It's been a while. It's good to lay eyes on you again. Yesterday, we had the opportunity with DPS to travel around the on the river, and we saw where the cartels, and on the other side of it, it's beautiful homes, just extravagant. But the cartel have come in and taken all that over and run away all the industry and businesses and families that were there. So now it's nothing like it used to be. My question is, Sheriff, with the push across the border into your county and surrounding counties, how many people are leaving? Because you said industry, the sheep and the goat industry depleted, it's gone.
Yes, sir.
Are you seeing that surge more and more, and is it lateral across the borders?
Well, from
on our side,
if we go by the last census, the current census shows we have a population of 3,100 people, almost 3,200. The census before, we had 3,900 people. So by that, we've lost 700 people in the past 10 years. But what we're starting to see because of this is, yes, people are leaving, but they're selling their properties. We've got one really nice piece of property that I'd like to have, but he's tired of fixing his fences. He offers hunts to wounded warriors, and he's constantly in the public eye in our county anyway, helping with the 4-H, FFA, Little League, et cetera, et cetera. He's getting ready to pull out, and we won't see him again. So we will lose that part of the industry, that tax base, plus his goodwill towards our county keeping us afloat. And the only people that are buying big tracts of land right now are the people that are subdividing it. They start subdividing it, they want to divide it. He's got 3,500 acres. Somebody wants to come in and buy that subdivide it into 10,000 or 10-acre plots, which will completely destroy my county because people are tired. They're getting ready to leave.
just to clarify something that you and I spoke about, if a rancher's fence is torn down and their livestock exit the ranch and get on the freeway, the highway systems, and a vehicle strikes that animal, it's the rancher's responsibility to pay, correct?
Correct. The rancher is responsible for that animal getting on the highway.
And that happens quite often.
It has happened quite often.
Okay. Mr. Cabrera, and this is the hard one. This is the nut we can't seem to crack. And when it comes to morale and health, I mean, in Big Bend, 2.5 hours to the Walmart, that's not going to change.
Yeah.
That's just not. Yeah. We have to figure out another way. How can we help enhance the want and desire to become an agent, but serve in these challenging areas?
You know, I think a big part of it is going to be pay parity. You know, if somebody can leave to a different organization and get closer to home, I mean, it's just common sense. You know, they're going to go home, and what the old saying is, "Happy wife, happy life." You know, and some guys will take the commute. Some guys drive 2 hours from El Paso, but it starts to become a drain on them little by little. So I know the patrol has done some things as far as making it a hardship station where you could stay for X amount of years, then you could transfer to a station of your choice. So stuff like that helps out.
This may be a little technical, but with just the advancements of technology in the areas that we are short on officers, would it make more sense if we surge technology into places that maybe necessarily people don't want to operate and have that assist a smaller number in order to enhance numbers somewhere else?
Most definitely. I mean, you look at the aerostats, those big blimps you see. I mean, those things are wonderful. They work wonders for us out here. And I know most of the patrol has lost access to those. We still have them in the McAllen areas. And once we lose them, and we will, it's gonna be a big blow to our agents because they're very useful. They can operate around the clock. They're not worried about fuel like the helicopters. If you could get those in other places, that would greatly help.
I think we might work on that. I yield back, sir.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Strong from Alabama.
Thank you. Sheriff Coe, you mentioned that the population of Kenny, Texas is declining. I already got that question answered. What is the capacity of your jail in Kenny?
Right now, my jail is closed down because it's old and it doesn't meet jail standards.
Okay. How many schools do you have in Kenny, Texas?
One.
You have one school. Do you have illegal aliens being taught in your school?
At this time, no.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you for going the extra mile and rather than just kick the can down the road, taking those illegals back to the border and send them back where they came from. That right there is very commendable. Colonel McGraw, do you believe it's time that the U.S. military stops this invasion of the southern border.
Yeah, I certainly believe it's time for the federal government to do its sovereign responsibility and whatever resources it needs to do it.
Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Burkeen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, you had mentioned something. This was not be something that's part of the record of this hearing, but I had a chance to introduce myself to you. I liked your 5-inch brim and your good leather work on your belt.
Thank you, sir.
We had a conversation before this hearing started,
Yes, sir.
where you had mentioned to me in 2005, circa,
Yes, sir.
that there was a policy that you paid attention to, detention, consequences. I'd like for you to elaborate on what you shared with me in private to this committee.
Okay. Back in 2005, I was with U.S. Border Patrol. We started a program that was called Operation Streamline. We started in one little part of Del Rio sector and expanded it as it went on. But every illegal alien caught, everybody, male or female, was prosecuted for 8 U.S.C. 1325, which is illegal entry into the United States. It worked. We had areas in Eagle Pass, Texas, that were seeing groups, on apprehension on a daily basis, anywhere between 50 and 150. Once we started that prosecution, they went someplace else. Once they moved, we moved with them. And after about a year and a half, our apprehensions went through the floor. Where we were apprehending 150, 200 a day in Brackettville, it went down to 10 or 12 a day. And those are usually, they're being transported in smuggling cases, but they too were prosecuted for illegal entry. And then we expanded that into expedited removal. In other words, right there on the spot, we did the paperwork, they were removed back to Mexico, and it was considered a deportation. So if they ever entered again, they were facing felony charges. That program worked.
And can you elaborate on, there was jail time involved in this, correct?
Yes.
As a deterrent?
Up to 180 days in jail for the illegal entry, which is a misdemeanor. And if they were caught again for reentry after deport, I believe it's 2 years or 5 years? 5 years. They faced up to 5 years for reentry after deport.
That's great. What do you experience now? Can you elaborate on if you show up on the scene and your county is not the first to apprehend them? If the Border Patrol is there, what happens in terms of your ability to start trespass proceedings against this person?
If we show up on scene and the landowner wants the ones that are caught on his property processed and prosecuted for criminal trespass, but Border Patrol got their hands on them first, they will not give them back to us. It's not because the agents in the field don't want to. It's not because the patrol agent in charge doesn't want to. It's coming from Washington.
And there's so many years of experience here in front of us at this table of dealing with this. President Biden has made the comment, not one more foot in regards to the building a fence or a wall. Director, what can you tell me? We saw, I think it was either under DPS or National Guard in the El Paso sector, rent a fence that the Texas Department, was actually where the federal government had stopped the construction. I took a picture with it. It says rent a fence. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me about Texas's position on physical barriers?
They're an absolute necessity. And as Congressman Luttrell indicated, sometimes you don't need it. Big Bend's a pretty good infrastructure itself if you've got technology employed, but clearly El Paso, when you have Venezuelans swelling along the Del Norte Bridge in trying to push in, if you don't have the infrastructure, and certainly on some of the areas where Texas Military Department has put concertina wire and other infrastructure, then you're going to get people able to move in such quantities that you can't stop it. So infrastructure plays a key role, and I think that whether it's permanent infrastructure or even temporary infrastructure where we had to use simply because we don't have time to build the type of fence that needs to be there, it's important.
And Mr. Guerrero, you represent 16,000 Border Patrol agents out of almost 20,000. And what is the guys and gals that you work with? What's their position on physical barriers? We have people across the nation post '86 amnesty who would talk about that there's no value in physical barriers. What are the people that you work with and your years of experience? What does it tell you on the value of physical barriers to solve this problem?
They work. I mean, it works 100%. You may come over that wall. If you climb over that wall, the chances are that our agents are going to be there to meet you on the other side. In Hidalgo, if there was no wall there, from the time you left the river to the time you disappear into the community is less than 30 seconds. But with that wall up, that gives us a good 3, 4, 5 minutes for you to get over and get down, and our agents are there. So without that wall, it doesn't stop everything, but it gives us enough time to get in position. And I mean, there's one around the White House. There's a reason that it's there, because it works.
So in terms of allocation of resources, you believe that one agent has the ability with the fence, a fencing structure, has the ability then to be able to cover much more ground, whether they're horseback, ATV, that gives that agent greater distance and more efficiency in their day-to-day work activities?
It is a force multiplier. It does slow them down so that our agents can get there and get the job done. So it's not the only tool in the toolbox, but it is a very necessary tool.
Thank you. I yield.
The gentleman yields. It would appear that I skipped one of our members. My apologies. My deepest apologies to the gentlelady from Florida. You are now recognized, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's testimony makes clear that Mexican drug cartels are trafficking narcotics, weapons, and children across our southern border, and that border security is collapsing under the failed policies of the Biden administration. We must recognize that the Biden administration's reckless failure to secure our border is allowing criminals to enter our country and undermining the rule of law. Between October 2022 and January 2023, Customs and Border Patrol officials arrested 9,445 individuals with criminal convictions, 209 members of known criminal organizations, and 53 people whose names appear on the FBI's terror watch list. What's even more concerning are the estimated gotaways who we cannot track. One argument that has been made by the administration in support of their failed policies is that our approach at the southern border should be humanitarian focused. So I would like to return to a subject of some prior statements, Colonel McCraw, that you made, and discuss the humanitarian effects on people that are coming across this border, those who are exploited, injured, or even killed. And I would like for you to share with us, if you would, your impression of whether these policies of the administration are in fact having a humanitarian effect.
Well, it may seem compassionate, but anytime you attract millions of people from around the world to essentially turn themselves over to the Mexican cartels, and we've described in detail in terms of how violent and ruthless they are, you're basically setting them up to be victims of crime. And it happens again and again and again. And not just when they get, before the river, but on the river, but in the other side of the river. And the Sheriff Code talked about in terms of abandonments. And you'll see even kids, because kids are great. You can bring with them, the younger the better. So bring a kid in your family unit if you're captured in that regard. But at the same point, they abandon those kids. And I don't know how many lives we've lost. I don't know Kinney County, but certainly Brooks County, right by the Falfurrias checkpoint. All of these things are playing out. Investigations we conduct. Investigations are very important when we target the cartels. Very important to do. But sex trafficking investigations. We've talked about these major cases. What these cartels and these organizations do is to the people is undescribable. You don't hear about it. It's not reported much, but it's happening, and you see it in our investigations, and you see it in patrol operations.
Tell us, if you would, what are the primary types of those investigations that you see, the common things that are happening, criminal conduct that's occurring, that's victimizing these individuals who are attempting to cross the southern border illegally?
Well, first and foremost, it's very difficult to tell the difference between smuggling and trafficking anymore with the cartels. So first and foremost, the money on the front side, you can argue, well, that's just the smuggling fee. But when they get across, they're maintained and housed inside stash houses, and they insist upon calling relatives to get more money. So it's kidnapping, in effect. Then you get them when they finally go to their final destination. They know where they're at. They know how to get in contact with them in that regard. And now it's extortion. They continue to pay money back to the cartels that they owe because they couldn't afford to pay all of it. And, going back to the policy side of it, is that people, will give up, and they've demonstrated again, they will sell everything they have to be able to try to come to the United States because it's that important. If they believe they have an opportunity, they won't if they believe that there are consequences.
Agent Cabrera, I'd like to ask a similar question of you. One thing that you mentioned earlier was your belief that if the children who you had seen victimized as part of this flood of individuals illegally across our southern border were here, that we would reach a policy solution. Tell me, if you would, what it is you have observed with women and children and how they are being treated coming across our southern border.
Just the other day, probably about a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks, it was about 35 degrees, 40 degrees, somewhere in there. And we had a little boy that was brought up by another group that found him crying on the river. He was 4 years old. He had one shoe on, he was soaking wet, and his parents were already here in the United States. We see that all the time. We see little girls 5, 6, 7 years old that their parents are already here, and they sent them in care of a smuggler, and the parents are in Houston or in Detroit or wherever. A while back, I had a 13-year-old girl that came up to us, turned herself in at the wall in a group of about 70. We asked for her documentation, and she handed us her birth certificate. She didn't say a word. All she did was cry for the hour and a half it took for the buses to get out there to come pick her up. We couldn't console her. And, I mean, God only knows what happened to that young lady. I saw a lady, I think in her late 50s, and she was just pummeled to a bloody pulp. This was about a year ago, and the reason she was pummeled is these river guides tried to get to her 12-year-old granddaughter, and luckily she fought them off, but she paid the price for it. But we see that time and time and time again, and if you did mandatory detention, mandatory removal, we wouldn't see this because we wouldn't be incentivizing people coming over and let's do everything we can. Let's risk our lives. Let's risk our young children. Let's put our young girls on birth control at the age of 12 or give them Plan B because we know that's part of the journey. If we disincentivize this journey, people would stop taking that journey.
Thank you, Agent Cabrera. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields, and I now recognize from her own district the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Dela Cruz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. When I spoke last session, I talked about the importance of technology and specifically drones, and where we had over 35,000 detections and 10,000 incursions. Well, drones can't work themselves, right? We need the manpower, the agents to be able to work them. So retention and recruitment is an important part of securing the future of our nation. So this question actually goes to Mr. Cabrera. Mr. Cabrera, over the last year, due to the failed Biden policy and the stress that it has put on our Border Patrol agents, have you seen an increase in agent retirement?
Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, like we said before, technology is great. We can have all the technology in the world, but if we don't have the agents, bless you, we don't have all the agents on the ground to stop it, we're not going to be able to do anything. It used to be when I first came in, and even up until about 5 years ago, when you hit that retirement age, you had maybe a 7 to 10 year gap where you could go, but most guys didn't go. They stayed till mandatory. Now when guys hit that retirement age, they jump as soon as they can, and that's a shame because we're losing very senior, seasoned agents that we're just letting them go.
Do you see that trend continuing?
I see that trend continuing, and I foresee it getting worse.
Share with the committee here about recruitment, and recruitment being a key part of being able to make sure that whoever's retiring, that not only do we still fill those spots, but even increase our agents at the border. So share with the committee about polygraphs and how polygraphs have affected recruitment.
You know, I think polygraphs have their place. I think the Border Patrol polygraph, I think it's a flawed system. I know we've had guys that come out of the military with security clearance, top secret, and they fail the Border Patrol polygraph, and so they get sent on down the road. I have tons of stories, whether it's people I know or people that I'm related to that can't pass the Border Patrol polygraph, but they pass the one for customs, or they go into DPS, or they fail it the first time and pass it the second time. It's just astonishing that nobody can pass this polygraph, and I mean, they ask some just ridiculous questions. They even go to, sometimes I've even heard of them going to people's sexual orientation on these polygraphs. What that has to do with anything, is insane. But if there is a place for it, they need to revamp that system and make it so that we're not losing good candidates to DPS, which we are. And it's good for them, it's bad for us.
So is this something, the polygraph test and how it's being utilized with the Border Patrol recruitment, something you would like this committee to take a look at?
Most definitely. I mean, like we said before, we're losing tons of great agents for just silly technology.
Tell us about overtime caps and how that affects maximizing the boots on the ground.
We have overtime caps. I don't know the exact numbers on it, but we do have a cap on overtime. So if we work it early on in the year, like this time of the year, everybody starts taking their overtime, and then towards September, October, November, there's no overtime left, because even if it's available, the agents can't go over that cap to work it because they've made too much already.
So let me make an example for my colleagues here that I think is very important. So people are maximizing their overtime right now. So let's just say November, if we had a migrant flow of 10,000 Haitians come over like they did in the past years, people would be maxed out on their overtime and could not go out and assist. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.